Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Today I want you to get comfortable, put on some pajamas, grab yourself a drink, and get all snuggled up because I want to tell you all about my top 50 middle grade books of all time. Yes, you heard me right, of all time. Not just what I read this year, not just what I read last year, but of all time. I've opted for a cold drink. I was going to have a hot chocolate and make it all really cozy, but I was just like, not in this outfit. So I'm cooling myself down with a pumpkin spice frappuccino. That's because I'm basic. So yeah, strangely enough, I've never ever done a list where I've listed all my favourite middle grades of all time. I've done, yearly top middle grade books, but never of all time. I do feel like a lot of people will probably already know what would be on my top middle grades of all time list. But I needed a concrete place to have these top 50 middle grades. Not only am I going to be, talking about the top 50, I'm going to be putting them in order too. And bear in mind, I have read over 400 middle grade books. So if something doesn't make this list, it doesn't mean that I didn't like the book. So this is only just like a really small fraction of how many middle grades I've read. And there are plenty more books I would consider my favourite middle grades that didn't make my top 50 list. And I was going to do a top 100, but then I looked at my top 50 middle grade books of 2020 video, so that was, 1 hour and 6 minutes long. I thought, times that by 2 and I'm out. So I'm settling for 50. But yes, please don't be offended if your favourite book doesn't make this list. I most likely haven't read it yet, or it just didn't make the top 50, but it's a book that I probably did really enjoy. So I just want to say that disclaimer. I was a little bit nervous about putting this list up for many reasons, but you know what? My channel is for the recommendations for you guys, you, the adults who might love middle grade and want more recommendations. I mean, you probably already know every single book in this list, but it doesn't matter. You're going to find out what my top 50 is in ranked order, and I feel like that's something that's revolutionary on this channel, if I do say so myself. So yeah, should I get started then? I don't think there's anything else I need to say. And remember, I'm genuinely nervous about sharing this list. Just because it's like near the end of this ranking, it doesn't mean it's a bad book or it's like one that I didn't enjoy. Please remember that. This is, again, top 50 out of 400. Anyway, number 50 is Murder on the Safari Star by M.G. Leonard and Sam Sedgman. This is the third book in the Adventures on Trains series. I adore this series so much. It follows a young boy called Hal who, with his uncle Nat, go on trains and solve mysteries. What more do you need? They go all over the world. This one, they go to South Africa. And this is definitely the most dangerous Adventures on Trains book yet, in my opinion. There's 4 books so far. In hindsight, I think this one is my favourite. Mainly because I have such a special place in my heart for South Africa. It was just fantastic in everything it did. So yeah, I loved it. Great mystery. I didn't know how it happened. It's such a twisty kind of mystery. I probably won't talk too much about each book because I feel like a lot of people already know these, plus I don't want this video to be too long. So that's what I'm going to say about this one, but it is a fantastic series, so definitely check it out. It's not my bottom book, okay? It's at number 50 here, but it's not my bottom book, okay? I just need you to know that. And at number 49 is Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow by Benjamin Dean. I do want to say that contemporary isn't usually the genre I go towards. I am mainly and predominantly a fantasy reader, so that definitely skews my list a bit. There aren't that many contemporary books in my top 50, so the fact that this is in my top 50 is a huge testament to this book. I absolutely adore this book so much. But yeah, I just have a bias towards fantasy, so you're going to see more fantasy on this list than contemporary. But yeah, this one follows a young boy called Archie, and his parents are acting weird. They've split up, and Archie ends up finding a flyer for Pride in his dad's pocket. Archie doesn't understand Pride or what it means, so he, along with his 2 best friends, go on this adventure to London to find out what Pride is all about. And honestly, this just makes my heart so happy. It makes it sing. It makes it sing a damn good Lady Gaga song. And it's just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's a book that I wish I had when I was a kid, honestly. It's just so colourful and fantastic. And you're going to hear the same kind of adjectives to describe a lot of these books because, again, I adore all 50 of these books with my whole heart. But this one, definitely one of the best contemporaries I've read. I've read it twice now. Yeah, I think I've read it twice now, and it's just as good the second time I read it. And number 48 is Moonchild, Voyage of the Lost and Found by Aisha Bushby, and this one is the first in a duology, I believe. And the second book I have not yet read, but I'm so excited to read it. I have it. It's ready to go. But in this one we follow Amira, and she lives on the sea with her sea witch mothers. Yes, that's right, mothers. love this. Amira also has this magical cat called Namur. I think it's pronounced Namur. And this mysterious storm hits the ship, causing them to dock. And Amira's never docked on land before. She's never like really stepped foot on land. But then Namur goes missing and Amira has to try and find her missing cat. But that is kind of like the bare bones of like the kind of the plot in what drives Amira forward. It is a really great adventure book, and honestly I was so surprised when I read this because I just wasn't expecting how much I would love it when I went into it. So it was like one of the best surprises of the middle grades I read last year. And in number 47 is The Ship of Shadows by M.A. Kushner. This one follows Aliyah, and she ends up joining an all-female pirate crew, and they are looking for different map pieces, and when all of these map pieces come together, the map will appear, and they want Aliyah to join the Ship of Shadows, and it's just a really fantastic adventure series. I read and loved the second book as well. This had all of the Pirates of the Caribbean vibes that I was really wanting in a book. So if you enjoy things like Pirates of the Caribbean, I really do think you would enjoy this book. It has so many fantastic messages, and just the adventure element as well is just so captivating, and I just enjoyed every page of this. It was just so much fun. In number 46 is The Strange Worlds Travel Agency by L.D. Lipinski. This one follows Flick, who goes to this new town with her parents. She ends up coming across this travel agency that's very run down, that's run by Jonathan. What's different about this travel agency as well is that there are suitcases in the shop, and when you go into one of these suitcases, you go to like different worlds and things. It's like a big huge multiverse of suitcases that takes you absolutely anywhere. Honestly, this book is just pure magic and adventure, and I love the travel aspect of it as well. You never know what you're going to get when Flick steps through a suitcase, but there's also like a mystery in here of what happened to Jonathan's dad, but also there is the City of Five Lights that seems to be like disappearing, and it's all very action-packed and exciting. So yeah, I really love this book, and it's just a really, really fun one, and I love the second book as well. In number 45 is A Clock of Stars, The Shadow Moth by Francesca Gibbons, illustrated by Chris Riddell. And this is the first book in the series. I have not yet read the second one, and I'm so excited to. But this one follows Imogen and Marie. They are sisters, and they end up following a moth into this tree that leads them to this amazing world. It's very Narnia meets Neverland. It's also like a little bit dark at times as well, which is one of the things I loved about this book. But it was just so adventurous, so magical as well. I want to say that about every middle grade on this list. But it's quite a big one, but the illustrations by Chris Riddell really do balance it out and really makes this story just that more exciting. Like, you really do get to see the world through Chris Riddell's illustrations, and you know, Francesca Gibbons paints this incredible world herself with her writing. So it is just one of my favourites, and I cannot wait to maybe reread this one and then read the second book together. Like, that would be so cool, I think. Look at me wanting to reread every single book on this list already. And number 44 is Other Words for Home by Jasmine Morgan. I absolutely adore how lyrical this book is because this is a verse novel. I think this might be the only children's verse novel I've ever read, I think, which I need to rectify because I fell head over heels in love with this book. This one follows Jude, who moves from Syria to America, and she moves with her mother. She has to leave her father and brother behind in Syria, and she ends up joining this American school. She makes new friends, but she also has to like struggle with a lot of things, and it's just like such a compassionate and beautiful and emotional book. And it's just, yeah, like it's so beautifully told. I love verse novels after reading this book, and I just really fell in love with Jude's story. And in number 43 is Kind of Spot by Elle McNichol. This follows Addie, and she lives in a very small Scottish village, and she ends up learning about the innocent women who lost their lives hundreds of years ago in the witch trials. Addie feels some sort of connection to these misunderstood women because they were misunderstood and judged by society the same way Addie is, because Addie is autistic. So Addie ends up wanting to make a memorial for these innocent women and to also have her voice heard by the community. So this is like a really fantastic middle grade book that I read last year. I think I've read this one twice now as well. And I love Addie as a character as well. I wish I was more like her when I was her age. I wish I'd spoken up more about serious issues when I was a kid. But yeah, this was just fantastic all round. Love Elle McNichol's writing. In a 42 is The Midnight Guardians by Ross Montgomery. I don't often love like World War II or like any kind of stories set during the war. In some other historical books as well, I don't gravitate towards historical, and this one is set during World War II, more predominantly the Blitz. But this one has a fantasy element to it because we follow Cole, and he is kind of evacuated outside of the city, whereas his sister remains in the city in London. Cole wants to reunite with his sister, and he goes on this adventure with, they were his imaginary friends, but they've become real. So we have a tiger, we have a knight, and we also have a badger in a waistcoat. Like, the adventure that Cole goes on is just incredible, because there is also the Midwinter King who wants to bring about total darkness to the world, and with the Blitz also happening at the same time. But yeah, I thought this was beautifully written, so imaginative, so exciting, action-packed. Brilliant. And in number 41 is A Night in Terror Tower by R.L. Stine. You will not often see Goosebumps books in my favourites. ever. There were some Goosebumps books I absolutely did adore. It was definitely more than 2, but they just didn't make the top 50. This one was one that I felt like such a great attachment to. I loved it. It's set in London. We follow Sue and Eddie. They are on vacation from America and they go to the Tower of London. And while there is this weird man stalking them. And also, not just that, but there is this story of a prince and a princess from like 300 or 400 years before, who went to the tower to be executed. And this executioner person who's stalking them is thinking that they're the prince and princess who need to return to be executed. So it's like really exciting, really fast paced, quite scary, and a lot of Goosebumps books just aren't scary. 90% of Goosebumps books are not scary. But this was genuinely a frightening one, and it's one that I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, I did read all 62 recently, and I did a whole movie-length vlog on it, so I will link that down below if you want to check it out. But yeah, this was a fabulous book. In number 40 is Wonderscape by Jennifer Bell. This one is so fun and adventurous. This one's like Jumanji meets Ready Player One. This one follows 3 kids who end up getting blasted into the future, where everything is this in-game adventure reality game thing. But they have to work their way through levels in order to return home. I love the characters. I love the banter they had. And they don't really know each other very well. They're kind of like new friends. Yeah, just like seeing their friendship like start and just the adventure they have to go on in order to get out of this like future where everything's this in-adventure reality game thing. It's just so good. It's just brilliant and so adventurous. I'm due a reread of this. I feel like if I reread this one, it would be like so much higher on my list. Total amazingness is what I would describe this book as in 2 words. In number 39 is 3Ks by Kelly Yang. This one is the sequel to Front Desk. The Front Desk follows Mia Tang and her parents. They immigrate from China to America, where they end up running a motel together. And it really follows their struggles in like starting this motel, the racism they have to face, the problems that they have to face from other people too. And like I said before, I don't really read a lot of contemporary, but this one was just so captivating. I just absolutely fell in love with Mia. Like Mia as a character is like such a strong vocal character who really opposes like grown-ups when they need to be opposed, and it does show that sometimes grown-ups aren't always right and they need a kid's perspective in order to do something correctly. So this is the sequel to Front Desk. I don't really want to say too much about what the plot in this one is about. I don't want to spoil it or anything, but yeah, it's just I love Mia as a character, and it's one of the reasons why I love the Front Desk series so much. And I also believe it's inspired by Kelly Yang's actual real-life story, so that's also something that makes me admire the authors that much more. So yeah, really fantastic contemporary series, although it's set in the 90s, I believe. In number 38 is Rumblestar by Abby Elphinston, and this is the first book in the Unmapped Chronicles series. My face just lit up talking about this book because this is, again, like another book that's just so adventurous and fun. We follow Casper Tock, who goes into this grandfather clock to run away from bullies, but when he goes to this grandfather clock, it opens up to the Unmapped Kingdoms, and there are these like different sections of it. We go to Rumblestar in this one, we go to Jungle Drop in the second book, and so on and so forth. And this one is a kingdom that's in the sky. We also have an evil harpy called Morg, who Casper Tock has to try and defeat. When I first read this, I was like, oh, this is like just as imaginative as Roald Dahl, but I don't really like Roald Dahl's books like as an adult. Honestly, like I really, really despise Roald Dahl's books as an adult, to be honest. Abby Elphinston is like 50, 100 million times better than Roald Dahl. That is my statement, and that is what I'm sticking with. And number 37 is Dark Whispers by Vashti Hardy. This is the second book in the Brightstorm Adventure series. Brightstorm follows 2 twins. Although it's just twins. When they're twins, you don't have to say 2 twins. Just twins. 2 twins would mean 4. No, just twins. So yeah, the Brightstorm twins, Arthur and Maudie, they end up in the first book anyway, get news that their father, who is like the skyship explorer, has gone missing, so they go on this adventure to find him. This is the follow-up to that. I love Brightstorm, but I do think I have such an affinity for this one. I cannot wait for the 3rd and final book in the series to come out next year. It took the adventure to a higher level. It was just that much more adventurous. There was some conflicts between Arthur and Maudie, and it was just like a bigger like character exploration in this one too. I do really want to read the 1st and 2nd book before the 3rd book comes out, so who knows, my opinions might change. Upon initial instinct when I read this book, I was like, this is the one. This is the one. So I just genuinely, wholeheartedly love this one. A fantastic sequel to an already fantastic book. Vashti Hardy, one of the best middle grade writers of our time. In number 36 is Hide and Seeker by Drea Herman. I have just done an interview with Drea Herman. I will leave that in the description box, like a link to that interview. This book follows Justin, and his best friend Z went missing a year before. He comes back, but he comes back a little bit differently. When Justin and other friends are playing hide and seek, the game goes wrong, and this mythical seeker comes and takes the children and takes them to the nowhere. And it's like a really tense, scary middle grade book. It's probably the scariest middle grade book I've ever read, to be honest. But I did also read this while camping outside, so that might have also helped with the atmosphere or the ambiance of reading this book. But yeah, it was so exciting and so tense. I think this actually might be the only middle grade horror I've got on my list. I do have loads that I've read that I absolutely did love, but this one cracked the top 50, and I love this book so much. It's fantastic. So yeah, fantastic book. And number 35 is Pages & Co. The Book Smugglers by Anna James. This one is the fourth and most recent book in the Pages & Co. series, and it is my favourite book in the series so far, mainly because of the Wizard of Oz element in this, because Wizard of Oz is one of my favourite children's classics of all time. But I do love the Pages & Co. series. I love following Tilly, but in this one we actually follow, well, more Milo. We do have Tilly in here, of course. Tilly helps Milo out, but Milo is a character we are introduced to in the third Pages & Co. book, and Milo and Tilly end up having to go on this adventure to find out why these poisoned copies of the Wizard of Oz has affected Tilly's grandfather and Milo's guardian. We also have the introduction of the botanist and the alchemist in this book as well, and it's going to be set up for this incredible arc that we are going to be getting going forward in this series. Honestly, there's just so much greatness about this book. Cannot wait for the next two books in the series. And the series, Pages & Co. as a whole, if you do not know, is set in a world where book wandering exists. So book wanderers can, travel into books, but they can also bring characters out of books and things like that. So it's a really magical and cozy series for me personally. Like, I love this series. This series is just a physical manifestation of how much books can be there for you. And it's just like a love letter to just reading in general and booksellers and book people in general, and just, I love this series so much. I love this one, and it's my favourite one in the series so far. And look, it matches my outfit. And number 34 is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This was one that people were screaming at me to read for the very first Believathon I did. One of my favourite books that I read during Believathon. It was so magical and so good. So in this one we follow a witch who saves these babies who are abandoned by this village. Like, they just leave these babies out in the woods. But she does save this young baby, and instead of feeding this baby Starlight like everyone else, she ends up feeding this baby Moonlight, and this ends up giving this baby magical powers as she grows up. She calls this baby Luna, and yeah, things start going awry when Luna starts to get towards her 13th birthday. So this is the one that I associate Believathon with quite a bit, actually. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this book so much. And in number 33 is The Haunted Mask by R.L. Stein, the second and last Goosebumps book to feature in this list. This is definitely my favourite Goosebumps book. In this one we follow Carly Beth, and everybody kind of picks on her and bullies her because she's very easy to scare, which is honestly like 90% of the characters in Goosebumps. But Carly Beth wants her revenge, so she tries to find the scariest Halloween mask that she can find, and she ends up coming across this really rundown store and gets this mask that actually ends up sticking to her face and she can't get it off. And the mask starts to change her as well. So it's actually really tense and scary as Carly Beth tries to find out how to take this mask off. Definitely the most iconic Goosebumps book, TV show episode, Goosebumps kind of entity, other than Slappy the Dummy, of course. And for good reason too, because this was just a really well written Goosebumps book. And number 32 is Green Glass House by Kate Milford. This one is actually another one I picked up on BookTuber's recommendations. This one is like a bit of a BookTube darling. And this is genuinely like a warm winter hug of a book. Like, the best way to read this book, honestly, is to wear something like this. Stylish, but also really comfy. With a hot chocolate, because there's many mentions of hot chocolate in this. And snuggling up by the fire and reading this. Like, this was one that, I mean, it's high up on this list, but I feel like half of the reason why I love this so much is because of how it made me feel when I was reading this. Like, it gave me all of the comfy and cozy vibes. Like, honestly, it just, like, you know when a book just makes you feel that way? It follows Milo, who works at a smuggler's inn, and during winter time it's supposed to be really quiet, but there is actually a lot of guests that come to Green Glass House, and Milo tries to find out why. There are different things that happen. There's a little bit of, well, a couple of twists, I guess, but in the words of that famous step song, that is probably my favourite step song, it's the way you make me feel, make me feel, make me feel. Oh, this one is so underrated. Okay, number 31 is Orphans of the Tide by Struan Murray. the way this shook me when I first read it, honestly. Like, oh, I need to reread it so I can read the second book as well. I want to read them both together because the second book did come out earlier this year and like I'm behind. I need to read that book ASAP. But this one is set on the last city on Earth and everywhere else is kind of like flooded and stuff and you know like this city is kind of out there and you know there's nothing else around it. But there is like this mysterious boy who washes up on the shore in the belly of a whale and everyone thinks that this boy is the enemy returned and the enemy is this kind of entity that brings about death and destruction. So our main character is called Allie and she doesn't believe that this boy is the enemy so she wants to save him and it goes around on this island and stuff. There are some twists and turns. It's a little bit gothic as well. There is some gothic ambience in this book too. Oh god, but when I tell you this shook me when I read it and I loved it so much. It was great. I cannot recommend this one enough. In number 30 is Juliet and the Shark by Kieran Millwood Hargrave and Tom DeFreston. Like this one hits you emotionally, honestly. Like this one is just so fantastically metaphorical and the illustrations as well. Like I don't think you could have the text without the illustrations, but you couldn't have the illustrations without the text. Like, oh, well, I guess obviously. Together, it's a tour de force. Like, honestly, like, the whole thing, incredible. This one follows Julia, who, along with her mother and father, they go to this lighthouse so that her mother can hunt down this, like, Greenland shark. But there's, like, this bigger picture going on. It's a bit of an exploration between the relationship between Julia and her mother, as well as, like, depression and all of the things that kids do feel, but I guess just isn't talked about enough. When I tell you the illustrations just add to it, I mean, the fact that there's also, like, trace and paper kind of deal illustrations in this too. I cannot tell you, like, it's just so artistic. And just look, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but obviously that doesn't, I don't think. This whole book is a package. It's a package. And the story, it made me weep. It made me weep. Yeah, it's one of the most emotional middle grades I've ever read. Oh, it's just so good. And in number 29 is Show Us Who You Are by Elle McNichol. And this, honestly, was another one that, like, shook me. Chapter 13, honestly. Gosh, and the fact that I was on live reading sprints reading this as well, and I couldn't hide my face. It was fantastic. This is a great book. This one follows Cora, who ends up getting entangled in Pomegranate Institute. Now, Pomegranate is a company that are making these holograms of people who are either alive or dead. They can build a hologram of anybody you want them to, and you could have a full-on conversation with this hologram and actually feel like you are talking to a real person. And this is the kind of company they are, but Cora is very, like, reserved about it, and there are things going on. There are different things happening, but Cora as well is just amazing. Loved Adrian as well. Cora and Adrian are two fantastic characters. Love them so much. But yeah, this had my heart racing. It really did. And it just messed with my emotions a bit. It played me. It played me like a fiddle. And in number 28 is Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This was the book that I mentioned earlier on because I did mention 3 Ks was in this list. So I have already said what this book is about. Mia Tang, who immigrates to America from China with her parents, where they end up running a motel. So yeah, this is the first book. Not much more to say about it because I think I mentioned a bit too much about the second one. But yeah, Mia Tang, fantastic character, love it a bit. So yeah, this one is definitely one of my favourite contemporaries of all time. And number 27 is The Wizards of Once, Never and Forever by Cressida Cowell. The final book in the Wizards of Once series. Oh my god, what a ride. What a journey. This book is honestly incredible and I would recommend reading this physically so you can get all of the incredible illustrations. Also by Cressida Cowell, but also the audiobook because David Tennant narrates it and he does this fantastic thing with his voice on like every single character. The Wizards of Once audiobooks are the best audiobooks I've ever listened to, period. But this book, the 4th and final book in the series, just blew me away completely. Each book in the Wizards of Once series just got better and better and better. It came to an all-time high in this book. I cannot get over the way this made me feel. So many character moments that were just phenomenal. Oh, actually, I should tell you what the series is about. The series follows Wish and Zar, and Wish is a warrior and Zar is a wizard, and they are raised to be enemies. So like wizards and warriors are enemies. But there is this greater threat, the witch. The witches are the bigger threat and they have to work together in order to stop the bigger evil from exacting darkness all over the world. That's just all bare bones of a description. There's just like a bonkers but also incredibly brilliant world in this. Like, I thought the first few books were so bonkers, but by the time we get to this book, everything just makes sense. We have honestly one of the best endings of a middle grade series I've ever read. Like, when I got to the end of this, I was like, oh my god. But yeah, I just absolutely adore this series so much, and this is definitely the best one from that series. In number 26 is Gargantus by Thomas Taylor. This one is the second book in the Orion Lost series, and the first book was Malamander, and I thought this one was just like so much more exciting, so much more action-packed than Malamander. It follows Herbie Lemon, who is a lost and finder at the Nautilus Hotel. He finds lost things, and essentially this young girl called Violet comes, Violet Palmer, because, you know, they're named after sweets, and I love that, honestly. Violet asks Herbie to help her find her parents. In the first one anyway, there was like this man with a hook who was after them, and it was just so exciting and so good. But this one was just on another level. There's like these storms that are happening, and Orion Sea as a setting is so eerie and atmospheric, but it's like a seaside town, and it's just everything happens that you can possibly think of. I love the setting so much. The characters, even the background characters, have some kind of resonance in this world. I just love the story of this one. It is my favourite Orion Sea book so far. I just couldn't put this one down. It just seemed like so many exciting and action-packed things were happening at once, and I was living for it. And number 25 is Rainbow Grey by Laura Ellen Anderson, and also illustrated by Laura Ellen Anderson. The illustrations in this one are also like so incredible. I love this book so much. This one is more of a children's than middle grade, but I still wanted to put it in this list because it's genuinely an incredible book. We're in the top 25 middle grades now of all time, and even though it's technically children's, it's still here. It's here because I love it so much. But in this one we follow Ray, who lives in the Weatherlands. And in the Weatherlands, everyone has like this weather magic. Why am I talking like that? But Ray doesn't have any magic of her own. She ends up going on this forbidden expedition to Earth, where she gets rainbow magic and becomes Rainbow Grey. It's epic. Like, this is epic, and I love it so much. And it's not because I am a character in this book as well as Gusty Gavin. And I actually help Ray on her mission. And like, I am such an important and vital part of this story, honestly. But that's not why I love it so much. I loved Laura Ellen Anderson's Amelia Fang series, which are for like younger readers, but I still ate that up. Oh my god, it was just so good. This one is just all of that charm and magic and bonkersness as, you know, the Amelia Fang series, and just to the next level. I adore the characters, the settings, everything. Like, this is just a warm hug, and it was just what I needed when I read it, honestly. It's just beautiful, amazing. I love it so much. And also look at that rainbow sprayed edge too. In at number 24 is Midnight Over Sanctifrax by Paul Stewart and Chris Fidel. This one is part of the Edge Chronicles series. This one's book 3 of the Twig Saga, and the Twig Saga is my favourite saga so far in the Edge Chronicles books. I started reading the entire series this year, but I only read the first 2 series, the Twig Saga and the Quint Saga. I need to continue the series because I absolutely adore this series. It was one of my favourite childhood favourite books of all favourite time. And Midnight Over Sanctifrax is the conclusion to the Twig trilogy, and I want to say, oh my gosh, like, it's hard because this is the 3rd book in that series, and I do have the other books in this list. How do you even describe the Edge Chronicles world, to be honest? It's a bit like Game of Thrones but for kids. So the Edge Chronicles are like 4 trilogies set on the Edge. The Edge is vast and there's loads of different places there, and the sagas just focus on different characters and like different events, and it's just like some of it connects, and it's just, yeah, it's like Game of Thrones but for kids, essentially, in terms of epicness and vastness of the series. Like, you follow like loads of different characters, you get loads of different storylines, you get so many exciting things happening. Literally one of my favourite series of all time. I love it so much, and it's been so amazing rereading this series this year, because when I've been rereading some of my childhood favourites, Goosebumps, they haven't lived up to when I, you know, idolised them as a kid. These hold up, and Midnight Over Sanctifrax was so exciting. The trilogy kind of ends on like this huge epic storyline that happens that is like a product of what happened in the 2nd book, so I can't say what happens, but it's just so epic and so adventurous, and I just love it so much, okay? And number 23 is The 13 Curses by Michelle Harrison, the author of the Pinch of Magic series. So this one is book 2 of Michelle Harrison's original like book series that she wrote, or the 13 Treasures series. I absolutely adore the 2nd book. Like, it's my favourite one in the series. There were so many different moments in this that I absolutely loved, and we were introduced to a new character who I absolutely loved. But 13 Treasures, the series, was about Tanya, who she can say like mythical creatures, especially fairies. By the way, these fairies are not nice fairies. But she goes to live with her grandmother at Elveston Manor one summer. Things happen, like she goes on like this epic adventure and stuff. So yeah, it's just a really great series. So underrated as well compared to A Pinch of Magic. Oh, it just blew me away, the 2nd book. It was so good, and I urge everyone to read the 13 Treasures series, like all 3 of them at once if you possibly can. And number 22 is Storm Chaser by Paul Stewart and Chris Fidel. This is the 2nd book in the Twig Saga of the Edge Edge Chronicles. So yes, this is, I did just mention the Edge Chronicles before. Again, it follows Twig. I don't think I explained in the previous one, but Twig is like this great character who I will explain later on when the first book pops up. Spoiler alert. Oh my god, like I cannot tell you how disturbing this book is. There is like this creature in this book, and this isn't a spoiler, it's just like one of the plot points of this book, but there is like this creature that is like disguised as a tour guide that takes really vulnerable people and trolls and creatures and everything across these like really treacherous marshes and things. But what he does is he kills anybody who he shows across the marsh and then harvests their like toes and fingers and stuff. And honestly, it's like so gross and so disturbing for a kid's book. So dark and delicious, I love it. But yeah, we have that element of it, but it kind of continued the story from the first Twig Saga book. Definitely one of the most disturbing things I've ever read in a kid's book. And number 21 is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum, and this is the only children's classic you will see in this list, mainly because I just don't gel with children's classics anymore. Half of them I read are a big yikes to me, honestly, but I read this one a few years back and I remember really enjoying it, and it was one of my childhood favourites. I would need to read it again just to see and make sure that it was definitely, you know, 100% pure. But yeah, I grew up on this story. I love this story so much. You know, Dorothy Gale is so iconic. Getting taken to Oz in a cyclone, coming across the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the Cowardly Lion, the Wicked Witch of the West. Honestly, like, everything is iconic in this. Obviously, it's different to the film, and I absolutely adore the film with everything I have inside of me. But yeah, I remember this one being such a good book too. So yeah, the only children's classic in my top 50. So now we are in the top 20. At number 20 is A Tangle of Spells by Michelle Harrison. This is the third and most recent book in the Widdershins Adventure series, the first book being A Pinch of Magic. Again, I don't want to say what the series is about because, spoiler alert, the first one's coming up. Anyway, the Widdershin sisters are three sisters who have these magical items that help them in the world. In this one, they move to a new place. It's just like very like cottagecore-y at times as well, and of course had lots of magic and all of that. And I just love anything to do with the Widdershins, honestly. Like, they are iconic characters now in middle grade. In any adventure they go on, I want to be there for. And probably one of the most dangerous adventures they've been on yet. So I will never not love this series, to be honest. In number 19 is Wildspark by Vashti Hardy, my favourite Vashti Hardy book. I just adore this book and everything it stands for. This one is set in Medlock, and it's a very like steampunky kind of world, and I love that. But inventors can bring like spirits of the dead back into these animal-like machines, and Prue, she lost her brother a year before, her brother died, and she ends up going to Medlock under her brother's name to see if she can restore her brother back into one of these machines. It's just brilliant. I love this book so much. I'm genuinely running out of positive adjectives at this point in time to differently describe these books. I just love it. I love it. It's definitely my favourite Vashti Hardy book. It just starts off really exciting and ends really exciting. It's just exciting throughout. Adore it. And I love the vibe of it. Steampunk, yes, I'm there. And at number 18 is King and the Dragonflies by Kirsten Calendar. This one, yeah, I read earlier this year as well, and I absolutely loved it. This is one that people were screaming at me to read as well, and it took me a while, but I loved it. And obviously because it's now in my top 20 middle grades of all time. But this one follows King, whose brother Khalid died, I think about a year ago as well, or some time ago, and King has convinced himself that his brother has turned into a dragonfly. But King also has a best friend called Sandy, and Sandy ends up going missing, and it kind of goes through King's emotions and his own identity, and it's just like one of the best like LGBTQ plus middle grades I've ever read. Just so beautifully written, so many incredible messages, and just beautiful throughout, quite honestly. And at number 17 is Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the third and most recent book in the Nevermore series. Cannot wait for book 4, honestly. Like, book, oh my god. I mean, I waited so long for this book as well, and it did not disappoint. Again, I have the, again, there are, like, again, this is the third book in a series, so I don't really want to tell you too much about what it's about. But, you know, this is the third book in the Nevermore series, and Nevermore is a place where there's lots of magical stuff happening, okay? Like, there's a magical society called the Wondrous Society, and Morrigan Crow is our main character. And in this one, there is like this disease that's turning animals into animals. So it's like Nevermore's answer to Zootopia, essentially. But it's so exciting, so many great developments happen, so many things with like the villain as well. There's like this great kind of side story where Morrigan's trying to learn more about her skills. It's so hard to talk about a third book in the series without spoiling anything. But it's just genuinely fantastic. Nevermore series is one of my favourite series of all time now. And yeah, just love anything Jessica Townsend produces at this point. And at number 16 is The Hatmakers by Tamsin Merchant. This one was Oh, God, so good. I loved it. This one is like a bit of like an Edwardian kind of London where we follow the hat makers and it's more specifically Cordelia. And the hat makers weave enchantments into hats. And different hats have like different properties. They can do different things when you put them on. But we begin this story where Cordelia's father goes missing at sea. And Cordelia wants to find out what happened to him. There's also the story of the princess going to war with France and the hat makers, along with the boot makers and all the other maker families in London, have to make these royal clothes for the princess in order to kind of settle this war. So there's lots of things happening. It's a great adventure. It's just beautifully written. I adore it. And also the audiobook of this is also fantastic. It is read aloud by Tamsin Merchant herself, and she is just, a goddess among men. In at number 15 is Orion Lost by Alistair Chisholm. Again, this was like a hugely surprising book. I had never read a middle grade sci-fi book that just blew me away like this. This one is set on a ship called the Orion and it's 4 months out of Earth. This ship jumps, but everyone has to go to sleep when a jump happens. But then something happens that causes all of the like adults to stay asleep during one of these jumps. And like Beth, who is the main character, as well as some other kids, do wake up from this event and they have to like control the ship and navigate it in deep space without any kind of adults around to help them. Oh, like so many things happen. Like it's so tense at times as well, and like there are some twists and turns, and also the ship itself. The ship is kind of like sentient, and we don't know if we can trust the ship at all. And it's just like, oh my god, it's just so good. Definitely the best middle grade sci-fi book I've ever read. Ever. In at number 14 is Beyond the Deep Woods by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell, the first book in the Twig saga, in the first book released in the Edge Chronicles, but not the first book chronologically. But yes, this is the highest rated Edge Chronicles book on my list. It is my childhood favourite book. Oh my god, like this scene on the front is terrifying. By the way, I don't know why they put that scene on the cover, but it's just so good. Like the adventure aspect of it. Oh my gosh, and there are some moments that are just like so dark. But we do have Twig who, you know, he lives with a family of trolls, but he's not a troll. But he's just like being brought up there. But then he kind of has to go on his own path when he's like more grown up. And he has to go through the deep woods. And the trolls always have to stay on the path. But Twig, he strays from the path. Twig, why? And he just goes through the deep woods. There's so many dangerous things happening. He comes across so many different characters. So many different like creatures. And just, oh my gosh, like the adventure is sky high in this. It's just fantastic. It's, yeah, my favourite childhood book. I could reread it right now, quite honestly. It's just so exciting. But some of it's also quite traumatising as well. In at number 13 is The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. This is the book that got me into middle grade back in 2018 when I was getting back into reading. And I love everything about this book, and I owe so much to this book. This one is like a Baba Yaga kind of retelling. We follow Marinka, who lives with her grandmother, who is Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga wants to train her to be like the next Baba Yaga, but Marinka wants a life of her own. And they live in a house with chicken legs that moves around the world, and they have to help guide the spirits of the dead. And it's beautiful. It's just a beautiful book, and I adore it with everything. Just in terms of impact and importance in my life, this one would most likely have been like top. But yeah, Sophie Anderson's writing style and this is flawless, and this was her debut. Fantastic. In at number 12 is Root Magic by Eden Royce. This one is again like a kind of newer favourite of mine, or at least like I read it earlier this year, so I guess it's not that new. But it's still a fantastic book. This one is set in like the 1960s in South Carolina, and we follow Jez and Jay, and they are brother and sister. They live with their family and they practice root magic, and it's an African-American folk magic that is being passed down through generations of their family. We have so many different things happening in this. It can be so tense at times, sometimes not because of like some of the supernatural stuff that happens in this, but like the real life stuff that happens in this. Like they have to deal with racism in the 1960s, and Jez and Jay are just two like fantastic characters to follow, and their relationship is like some of the best like sibling relationships I've ever seen in a middle grade, like the way it's written and the banter they have, the atmosphere in this too. I love the setting, the marshes. I love how sensory the writing is. Oh, it's just a perfect book, and I love it so much. And in number 11 is A Sprinkle of Sorcery by Michelle Harrison. This one is the sequel to A Pinch of Magic, the second book in the Widdershins Adventures series. And in this one we have another adventure with the Widdershins girls, and they are again like so fantastic in this one. In this one we have Charlie getting kidnapped, and we have some Will-o'-the-Wisps. and we also had like an adventure on the sea, and just so many great things happening in this book. Again, like this series cannot do anything wrong. It's just all there. The sisters, the atmosphere, the setting. I love Crowstone. I love the kind of legend aspect of this as well. We also have like this legend of a witch in this as well, which I also love. I love legends within books. But yeah, there's just so many different elements to this that I love. A really fantastic follow-up to A Pinch of Magic. Getting into the top 10 now, and in at number 10 is The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson. Love the adventure of this book so much. In this one, we follow Jelke, who was found abandoned in a bear cave and taken to like this village. She's always wanted to know where she comes from, so she ends up going into the frozen forest to find out her like roots and things, and like what happened to her. And she meets so many great characters along the way. We also have Mousetrap, who is one of my favourite middle grade sidekick characters, I guess you would say. And I just adore this book so much. And there are stories within stories in this too, because Jelke tells a story every now and then. A chapter is like dedicated to that story. I need to reread this book like ASAP, because it's so magical and adventurous and wonderful. And yeah, I'm just saying the same things now, but this is my 10th favourite middle grade book of all time, and for good reason. I just adore it. And at number 9 is Amari and the Night Brothers by Baby Alston. This one has come like so high up on my list, even though it's like a rather newish one. It came out earlier this year, but I read it last year. For Believathon, I had an art copy, so thank you so much to the publisher for sending me one of my favourite books of all time. In this one, we follow Amari, whose brother Quentin has gone missing, and she ends up finding this suitcase in his room with an invitation for her to go to the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, where she starts to train as a junior agent. These agents kind of deal with like different supernatural things, and it was like Men in Black meets Percy Jackson kind of thing. It's just so fantastic. Adore this book so much. Like, I've talked about it so much over this past year, but I've also thought about this book so much over the past year. It's been living in my head rent-free. I just absolutely love the world that has been built up here. This is the first in a series too, so I cannot wait to see where we go next. Like, I don't mean to have such high expectations, but I just can't not, considering how much I fell in love with Amari and the things that she does and her strength of character, the friends she makes, the twists that happen. There's just so much to love about this book, honestly. And give me a couple of years, I think this would probably end up cracking my top 5. Like, upon like many different rereads. And I've read this book 2 times now as well. I read it, the proof copy, and then I read the final copy earlier this year as well. I just adore this book. And at number 8 is The Castle of Tangled Magic by Sophie Anderson. My favourite Sophie Anderson book so far. Honestly, every single Sophie Anderson book has gotten better and better. Her writing, I don't know how she does it, but she just has this way of writing like the most whimsical and grounded middle grade books of all time. In this one, we follow Arya, who lives in Castle Mila. There is this storm that's threatening to destroy her family home, and she ends up going through this, like, I'm sure there's like this portal in the attic. Yeah, she steps through this magical doorway in the attic, and she comes across like this magical land where there is like this evil wizard. There's like different things going on and giants and all of that. It's just so good, and honestly it like gets your emotions high in the last act. Has one of the best callbacks to another book in this book too, and that's all I'll say about that. But honestly, when I read some of the moments in this, it just made my face light up so much, and I just freaking adore this book so much. And I say that about everyone at this point, but I'm repeating myself, I don't care. And at number 7 is Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the first book in the Nevermore series. In this one, we follow Morrigan, who is destined to die, and she is saved by Jupiter North and whisked away to the land of Nevermore, where she has to prove herself to be magical upon this wondrous society. And there is just so many different magical things going on. I love, love, love the world that is built in this. It is one of the best worlds I've read in a middle grade series ever, or any series in general, to be honest. It just captivates you, it brings you in, it has whimsy, it has adventure, it has magic, it has charm. It's just magic in a book. Definitely a fantastic start to what's going to be like the best series ever. I just know it. By the end of the series, it's just going to be the best series ever. And I cannot wait for more, honestly. Like the writing style, the way we're introduced to the world, the characters, the different things that are introduced and set up. Perfect. Perfection. Love this book so, so much. And at number 6 is A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. This one has such a special place in my heart. I love it so much. It's probably one of the first books I championed on my channel way back in 2019. Which actually isn't that long ago, but it feels like it's been a long time ago, quite honestly. But yes, this one does follow the Withersham sisters. I mentioned the other 2 books in this series on this list already. In this one, there is a family curse that are on this, the Withershams, and they will die if they ever leave Crowstone. and they have to try and break this curse. Just a fantastic, atmospheric, middle grade book, and Michelle Harrison is definitely a fantastic writer who knows how to write the magic and darkness, I guess, of this series. And yeah, this was the start of something new. It feels so right to be here with you. In at number 5 is Wondersmith, The Calling of Moriarty by Jessica Townsend, the second book in the Nevermore series, and it's my favourite book in the series so far. Upon initial instinct, I enjoyed this one more than the first one. There was more action. I really enjoyed some of the more character developing moments with Morrigan in this one as well. Just so many great things happened in it, and I love it so much. Like, I can't really tell you too much about the plot in this one because spoilers, but I just would honestly urge you to read the Nevermore series if you have not yet done so. It is everything you ever need in middle grade, quite honestly. Everything you need in a middle grade. Oh, I love the series so much. I'm definitely going to reread all 3 of them before book 4 comes out, I think. Oh, and just have like such a magical time doing it. I love you. In at number 4 is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. Oh, honestly, the feeling this book gave me when I read it, I can't even describe the feeling it gave me. It just made me feel incredible. It gave me magical and amazing vibes. Yeah, I've run out of words, I'm sorry. This one follows Mindy, who lives in the Valley of Fruitless Mountain with her very poor parents, and she wants to reverse her, family's fortune by visiting the Man of the Moon. And she goes on this incredible journey. She meets a dragon that can't fly, she comes across a tiger, a king, loads of different things happen, and there are like stories within stories, like different myths and things that are brought into this. Oh my god, again, I want to reread this one right now. I know that if I ever feel down or sad and I just need like instant happiness and instant magic in my life, this book is the one that I would turn to, honestly. Even though it's number 4 on this list, this one is one that I would pick up no matter what time. I could just fall into this world again and it would pick me right up. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful and stunning. I love the illustrations. It's incredible to me. It's just fantastic. Please read it. Please read it. In at number 3 is Frostheart by Jamie Littler. This one is the first book in the Frostheart trilogy, and this is a book series I think everybody kind of associates me with at this point. But Frostheart does follow Ash, who has these magical powers, and he can communicate with Leviathans, and Leviathans are monsters that live in the Snow Sea, and everyone's scared of Leviathans, and this entire world is like apocalyptic, and Ash lives in the Fire Stronghold, and one day the crew of the Frostheart come to, bring supplies and stuff, but Ash ends up unleashing his powers in front of everyone to save the Frostheart crew from Leviathans, and that gets him kicked out from the Stronghold, and Ash ends up joining the crew, and he tries to find his missing parents. Lots of amazing things happen in this. We have his Yeti Guardian Tobu, his best friend Luna, and it's an incredible adventurous series. It's my favourite middle grade series of all time. The illustrations by Jamie Littler as well. It's very heavily illustrated. You will find lots of incredible illustrations in here. It's just all of it incredible. It all works. It's brilliant, fantastic, epic, adventurous. Nothing more I can say about the series, quite honestly. In at number 2 is Frostheart Escape from Aurora by Jamie Littler, and this is the sequel to Frostheart. Yes, it's in the number 2 spot. I found it a little bit better than the first one because I just felt more connected to the characters in this one. The adventure got more epic. There were loads of different things happening that kind of brought about so many exciting things to come for the third book. It's a snowball. It's a snowball of a series where the more it goes, the bigger the snowball gets until boom! That's the kind of series this is. Favourite series of all time. Second book was incredible, fantastic, amazing. I just love everything about the series so much. So yes, this is my number 2 book. And then finally, my favourite middle grade book of all time, probably to no surprise, is Frostheart Rise of the World Eater by Jamie Littler, the third and final book in the Frostheart series. Yes, this is my favourite middle grade book of all time. I did a reading vlog on this recently, and I cried. I cried in the reading vlog, I cried reading it. It just, the perfect end of a series, honestly. The perfect end. And so many emotional things happen, like, paired with the illustrations and the brilliant imagination of Jamie Littler, the words, everything. It just came together to make this really cinematic experience. And I could say everything in my mind. I could feel it in my heart. It was fantastic. The best way to end the series. I didn't want the series to end, but it wrapped up in the best way possible. I'm still so emotional and upset about it, quite honestly, but it is the best book ever for me, in my personal opinion. Best book ever. Not just middle grade, but of anything ever. My favourite book of all time. And for a very, very good reason. Adore everything. Adore it so, so much. It's brilliant. Please read it. So there we have it. That was my top 50 middle grade books of all time. This is probably going to be a really long video, so I apologise. But if you did make it up to this point, will you please let me know in the comments what your favourite middle grade books of all time are? I would love to know that. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like if you did. Subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to see it. And I will hopefully see you in the next video. Bye.